What is up, everyone? Welcome back to a whole new episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jonna, and this is a very special episode. This is my 1-year anniversary to having this podcast, and I have Lauren here with me today. Yay. She is going to help me go in a year in a review because she's been part of it for half of a year now. So I cannot wait for you all to dive in with us. All right. Since this is our 1-year podcast, we always talk about the drink of the day that we're having. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the bottle with you guys because it's a celebration. And
yes, it is.
And we are going to have some Prosecco with pineapple juice. And we will get to that in just a minute. So let me open this and pour some drinks and I'll be right back. All right. Had to have that anticipation cork pop and the pour. Just wanted y'all to be a part of it because I also want to explain this pineapple juice situation. So I have a friend we were talking about mimosas at work one day, and she was like, have you ever tried pineapple juice in a mimosa instead of orange juice? And I was like, no. She was like, you have to try it. It's life-changing. Totally did. She was totally right. Life-changing. But yeah, we're going to get into this. I cannot believe it's been a year.
It's crazy.
It's very crazy.
It's gone by so fast. Well, the year's gone by so fast. But I'm super excited to get to celebrate this with you.
Me too. And I'm just glad you're here to celebrate it with me because you've definitely been a part of it for half a year now. If you look back, you started back in July or August with me. So you've been doing this with me and co-hosting with me. And I just love it because it turned into a beautiful friendship, and now we are more than just co-hosts together. So I think it's great that the podcast has brought people together.
Absolutely.
And I love that people actually tell me that they like the podcast. So I think that's cool. But I'm going to let you take over because you are hosting today.
That's right, I am.
And I'm the co-host.
Get ready. No. Okay, first off, I want to ching ching because
Ching ching.
Happy 1 year.
Happy 1 year.
I'm going to get a little taste of this first.
Well, I didn't shake up the pineapple juice, so it's a little tart.
No, that's good.
Okay.
It's funny because I've always done pineapple juice and rum.
Oh, yeah.
But I love champagne. So that's a good mix up from, what you normally do.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right, here we go.
Let's get into this. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So from someone who, myself, I've started businesses and stuff like that, it is a lot of work that people don't see that goes into something, even like a podcast that you do at home.
Yeah.
So much goes into it. And it I don't want to say it takes over your life, but it can take over your life.
It can.
I think a lot of people think, oh, you just get to sit down and have drinks and talk to people and whatever. And that's an aspect of it, but there's so much more.
Exactly.
So I guess one of my first questions is, what did you not expect?
Honestly, I didn't expect the work. I thought, because you just think that in your mind, you're like, oh, anyone can do a podcast. Let's just sit down with some microphones with some friends and talk. And sure, that's what you can do. But if you want anything of substance, like where you want to dig deeper into someone's life or know some things, you have to do a little research behind it, get questions together, poll your audience, and you have to reach out to people to get them on your podcast, which can be difficult with scheduling, right? This is not my full-time job. I don't get paid to podcast. I'm not a celebrity where people care about my life. So to get people interested in what I'm doing is hard. So the work that goes into that is very hard. And that's why I've had to take a couple of breaks throughout the podcast because of my scheduling.
It can definitely be mentally and emotionally draining.
It is.
Just the work aspect of it, the scheduling and the setting up and the having to do all the uploads. And
I didn't expect the emotional drain too, because if you spend an hour podcasting with someone, it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
People do edit their podcast. I don't. Obviously you can tell. There's always bloopers or audio issues, but it's they stay over and hang out afterwards, which is great. But it's all that talking and emotional. It's almost like a therapy session.
Yes.
You leave feeling drained because you just spilled your guts out and you're trying to entertain someone even though they're not in the room.
Well, okay. So, and I can speak this because you interviewed me the very first time, but then after that, like we've done some interviews together, and then we sit down and just chat. But I think sometimes people can get a high from doing it, and it can be super fun and super energizing, but it can also be the opposite of that. Or you go from a high to then having to like
feeling low, like you're like, what's wrong? What am I missing? And you're like, oh, I was just talking and having a good time with my friends, and now that's gone. Yeah.
And then you kind of have to weave that into like your everyday, because you do this every week. Like it's not, once a month. It's something that like becomes part of your norm.
Well, that, and sometimes like depending on who my guests are, I have to I try to make it as convenient to my guests, right? Because they're doing you a favor to be on your podcast. So I try my best to schedule around them as long as I'm not working. So if I have to there was a time where I was doing 3 people in a week, and that was really hard. That was before I had a Monday through Friday job. So on every single off day, I was podcasting with someone.
That's a lot.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
It is a lot of scheduling. And then I'm not a big drinker. So I was drinking a lot with the podcast because that's what people want to do. Oh, let's have a drink because it'll loosen me up. Yeah. And so that was hard because I was like, I don't want to drink.
It's funny because I think you are naturally gifted with using words and speaking.
Oh, thank you. Because I do not feel that way.
You are. It may not be in a way that you think someone would be, but you definitely are. This comes very natural to you. But for me, like I sometimes have to have a drink in order to do this, to get me outside of my head. Where I think I've got so much to say.
Oh yeah. If you're in my that's like we were at a Botox party. That's totally off topic. Was at a Botox party the other night, and I was like just talking, and like if something enters my head, I have to say it. I have to say it. So that's just hard.
Okay. So my next question for you is, what has been your favorite episode to record?
Oh God, I knew this was probably going to be a question, and I don't want to offend anyone.
No, it's not about the person.
No.
I think it's,
I'm trying to think because there's been so many good podcasts.
Well, list some.
Let me think. So I love the ones with Lindsay. Of course, that was the one last week because she's just so personable, and she's kind of easy to bounce things off of too.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think like what was. So one of my favorite, just because of the content, was the one with Tasha, where we talked about Black Lives Matter, and she just kind of gave us an insight on that. So that was a big favorite of mine, just because it was deep and it was a hard conversation to have, but it needed to be had. So that definitely was probably one of my top favorites. And then I loved the Cote de Femme one, just because Andy and Kristen are just, they're just fun. And we got to drink their wine and have fun at their house.
Yeah.
And then I would definitely have to say probably Amanda with Discount Divas too, because she got to tell her story of building this empire that's like a multi-million-dollar empire. So yeah, I think those would be top. Like I've enjoyed every single podcast I've done.
Well, yeah.
But if I had to say top favorites, I would say definitely those, just because the memories of them or the things that I learned. Also with Hannah, who's an esthetician, learned a lot about skin. Yeah. That was a favorite. And like I've told you in the past, podcasts are selfish. If I want to learn something, I reach out to that person to be on the podcast, because if I'm wanting to learn it, then other people are wanting to learn it too.
Well, okay. So what I'm hearing is it's more than a conversation.
Yes, I'm digging deeper because I don't know about that topic or that subject, and I'm actually truly interested in it. And not that everyone's interested in the same thing as I am, but it kind of makes the questions easier instead of reaching for questions. Because if you're not interested in a topic, it's really hard to come up with questions or to make the conversation flow. But when you're truly interested in digging into something, I think that makes the conversation flow so much easier.
100%.
And that's what they'll tell me all the time. It flows. You don't have to reach for something. It's not so super fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
completely.
Okay.
Completely. I think you've probably, getting to interview a lot of businesses and stuff like that, you've gotten to take away a lot that you get to, use in your own life.
Yeah.
So it's not just about let's talk and what's your opinion and such.
Yeah.
There's more to it.
There's more to it, because I feel like being female and being in my 30s and having the friends that I have, I feel like we're all kind of interested in the same thing. That's why we're a friend group. So if I can reach out to that person to get them on the podcast, to get more information out into the world, or even if it was something deeper that matters to me, like with Tasha, then I want it out there in the world.
Yeah.
So that's where my podcast is kind of split. Like it was never meant to be interviewing businesses.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that later. But it was never meant to interview businesses. But I like the way it's flown and grown.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like it's been very organic.
Yeah.
And I feel like you've kind of stayed true to what you want to do, where I think you got to a point with the businesses where you were like, okay, I like this, but I'm also wanting to go another way. And so you kind of redirect it. Like that was really fun to see as like a friend is you, I guess, taking control and saying like, no, okay, I've got to take a step back and I need to redirect to where I want to go.
Yeah, because it was meant to be. If you ever heard my old intro that I don't really play anymore because most people don't have intros anymore. They just kind of tell you what's going to happen in the episode, which I like personally. Yeah. Because if you have that little intro there, then people can be like, no, this is not what I want to listen to. And you can turn it off. You don't have to wait for the episode to come on. But my first intro was, it's a verbal diary because I have a lot of shit to say. Because if anyone knows me, I'll go up the handle. Like I do. Like I'm passionate about a lot of things. And I have an opinion that's very strong. And I like to talk about it.
Yes.
So
there's so many people that don't. And I think like.
Yeah, but I get a lot of shit for it. So. Because I'm not the quote unquote norm of why don't you sit down, shut up, keep your opinion to yourself kind of person.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before where we are very similar, even though I think we are different in personality. Like you're much more outgoing. I think I'm much quieter.
No, I'm really not. You think I am, but I'm not. Yeah.
But compared to me, I think the way that you express is much more extroverted.
But I'm actually very introverted, oddly enough.
Well, there's also extroverted introverts.
That's true.
So,
but I don't like going out.
Well, yeah, but I mean, just I don't know. Anyway,
like we always do, babbles nonsense. Hashtag. Okay.
With a little rhyme and reason. Okay. Next question is, what has been your most embarrassing moment during recording?
Oh God, the Case Kenny podcast for sure. For sure.
I figured you might say that.
Funny little story about that. So. I won't even listen to that episode because I'm terrified in my mind how bad it is. Because when it was happening, I couldn't make words and I couldn't have a conversation that I typically would because I got in my head too much. So typically when I do a podcast, obviously there's work that goes into it. But I typically know everyone I interview, right? Yeah. And if I don't know them, it's an adjacent no. It's not someone that's like got 300,000 followers on Instagram and is a podcast host himself.
Yeah. I think that alone probably.
Well, it's not even that. So no one knows the backstory of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out there because I don't like him anymore. And I will just tell her I don't personally know him, but I followed him because initially he gives great advice on his Instagram. I listen to his podcast. It's great advice, right? He's always talking about not being a fuckboy or here's the signs to look for in a fuckboy or, friends and things like that. So I wanted him on the podcast as like a relationship type advice because I thought it'd be a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
Well, he flaked on me 3 times. So like I had gotten ready for the podcast 3 times, like gotten ready because this was a Zoom interview, like gotten ready, like full hair, everything.
Yeah.
Where normally I'm just in sweats.
Yeah.
Got ready for it. And he like 30 minutes before it started was like, hey, I'm going to have to reschedule. And I was like, wow, okay. I get you're busy, but I have a life too. I'm trying to schedule around this. And then he was very dry. I thought that he obviously should have known that I would have been nervous. I'm a nobody. You're a podcast host. Can you not carry a conversation?
Yeah, I get that.
And then when I shared it, he did not share it. So I just thought that was odd that he didn't share it. And not that that's a big deal, but I was just like, you even said like where you got your start was from a huge podcast.
Yeah.
So whatever, it is what it is. But I don't know. I look back on that, and if I would have known what I know now or felt the way I felt now, it would have been a different podcast. I'd have been like, so how do you know so much about fuckboys? Is it because you're one yourself?
I think that needs to be an episode. Just saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's not going to come back on this podcast.
I will say though that like that's a huge learning lesson.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like there's so many things that you can take away from that moving forward.
Well, I had a whole thing that I wanted to say, right? And then people started making me nervous. And then when I started looking up things like a podcast he had been on, which I wish I'd never would have done, I started getting in my head like, I can't ask that question. I can't say that. I can't do that. That's already been asked. Well, my followers hadn't heard it. So I could have asked those same questions instead of trying to be original.
Right. And trying, it's like you want to impress them so they feel that they're not wasting their time, but then it's at the, what's the word? It's at the
expense
of your podcast and your followers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that.
But that would definitely be my worst episode.
Okay. Okay. Let's go a little lighter. What has been a high point for you personally in the past year, podcast or not?
I think it's helped my social anxiety for sure, because I typically don't like to talk to people. And let me rephrase that. It's not that I don't like to talk to people. It makes me nervous to talk to people or reach out to people when I want to say things. But that has gotten me, like, I've actually gotten a lot better at not becoming anxious and being like, sure, let's hang out. Let's go here. Let's talk about this uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest.
It's funny because I'm more introverted, and I think I get stumbled on words sometimes, but I can remember when I started doing hair and I learned how to speak to people, just general chit chat.
Yeah.
When I was doing someone's hair. And I can remember like we would go, like me and my husband would go out to dinner and I would start talking to like the waiter or something.
Yeah.
And he would be like, who the fuck are you? And I'm like, but that's what I do all day long. So I can totally see how this helps in like your everyday.
Yeah.
Completely.
For sure.
Okay. Next question is, what has the podcast taught you?
Oh,
About yourself, others, life?
About myself, that I interrupt people all the time. That when a thought pops into my head, I immediately want to say it.
You got to get it out.
Versus waiting on someone to like have that break. And I think it makes me realize it in general conversation with friends. I'm like, ooh, I do that. Mm-hmm. Because I can listen back to a podcast and hear it, right?
Yeah.
You can't listen back to your friends.
But it is hard too, because sometimes like when that moment is gone, it's gone and you can't get it back. So if you don't say it, then sometimes you forget it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and repeat the question again, because I had already lost the battery.
What has the podcast taught you? Whether it's about yourself, others, life.
That about myself, and that like I used to care so much, and I would check my stats every single day and be like, how many people are listening? Where are they listening from? And now I'm like, you know what? I don't care, because I enjoy this.
Yeah.
So if 2 people listen, I don't care. It's cathartic to me. It's my therapy. So whatever. So
I love it.
And honestly, about other people, that a lot of people are not what they think they are or seem to be.
Yeah.
Because you put a microphone in front of their face, they're a completely different person. I'm just serious. I'm serious. It's like, it's not, everyone's not like someone that you think is super confident really isn't when it comes to putting on it. Like Case Kenny, who this great podcast host who does it by himself and edits it, wasn't a great person to interview. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, and last thing, I repeat a lot of stuff. Like today, I've said typically and a lot. I've realized what words I use.
Words, yeah.
And I try to quit.
I do that a lot. Or like when I start hanging out with someone, I'll pick up on a word that they use and I start using it and I'm like, where did that come from?
Well, because I used to listen to my podcast to see how it would sound, and I would say okay a lot when someone would answer a question. I go okay and move on, and I was like, that's weird. Stop doing that.
But it's also like, fuck it, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Next question. What topics do you hope to cover in the future?
Well, I actually have a few coming up that I'm super excited about. I have a guy that I've reached out to. I don't know his last name. His name is Kyle, and I know on Instagram it's Smiles with Kyle. And he is part of the LGBTQ community, and he is like, I'm an open book. Ask me anything. So that's one of those deep conversations that's hard to have. That you want to ask questions.
Yes.
So I'm super excited about that, because I've been looking for someone who would be willing to open up about their story and how hard or not hard it was for them to come out, or if, do they always know? And then I have a couple of friends who have infertility issues that want to talk about that and speak out on that, because we as women in our society, which we talked about this on one of our podcasts coming out soon, that it's not really okay to ask women that, because you don't know what they're going through. Maybe they are trying, maybe they don't want to have a child. So asking someone, when are you going to get pregnant, isn't really the best or smartest thing to do.
Yeah.
So those are two I know for sure. Now, if I could have my range, would love to interview some reality TV stars, ask them some drama, like Lullacant.
Okay, so that leads into my next question is, if you could interview anyone, and there's two, a celebrity and non-celebrity, who would you interview?
I can only give you two people? Or can I give you a list of people?
Give me a list. I know you're not going to give me one, so.
So reality stars, I would want Lala Kent, Stassi Schroeder, and Katie Maloney on my podcast for sure, hands down, because I'm a VPR diehard. And if it was a celebrity, I don't even know that I want to interview any celebrities, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Not one comes to mind that I'm like, oh my God, I would just love. Well, I guess Mariah Carey, because of her book that I read.
Yeah.
Would love to go into detail with that, because if y'all have not read Mariah Carey's autobiography, definitely need to read that. And Jessica Simpson, maybe, because of her book. But as far as like celebrities, I don't know that there is one that I would actually be dying to put on my podcast.
Okay. And non-celebrity, like people we know.
Oh. I feel like I've interviewed everybody we know. Let's see. I definitely want Tanya from Nashville Perfector Injector on my podcast to talk about filler, because she's supposed to be the lip queen in Nashville. So I would really love to interview her. And I've reached out to her. She's a little busy. Oh, Ashley Nordstrom. She's not a celebrity, but she does a skincare line that she created herself. Would love to interview her. I did reach out to her, but she was pregnant at the time and was very busy just starting her company. So I may try to reach out to her again. Yeah, so those like non-celebrity people.
Fun.
Yeah.
Good answer. Okay. This is really like my last question.
Okay.
Where do you see the podcast going?
Girl, I couldn't tell you. The podcast, I would love to see it reach more people. That's obviously how much effort I put into it with promoting it. I haven't been on my Instagram stories in a while. I'm just going to go. I dissolved my lip filler recently, so I don't have my lippies, and I don't like what I look like without my lippies. So, and it's no for no reason bad. Like, I just want a blank canvas to start over, because I've been doing it for so long, and it was creating some lumps, which they said can, every so many years you probably need to dissolve them. And I'll talk about that later in detail, but I would love to see it reach more people. Like, I would love to have a production company come up to me and say, we love your podcast. Let's do it. Let's do the damn thing. Here's you some sponsors.
Yeah.
I think that would be cool, but will that happen? Probably not. I don't care. Whatever.
Well, I mean, I think the best thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is when you want something, and this is the whole like manifestation thing. Yeah. You have to detach yourself from the outcome. And I think I think you have. Like, I think you found that sweet spot of like, I enjoy doing this. I want to do it. I want to do well, Well, I think the episodes that are the best or that have the highest ratings aren't the ones where I have business people on. Yeah. It's where I have my friends on. Like, I know Ivy's the one where it says shit gets weird, because she was just open and honest about like things that have happened in your life. Your episode where me and you got real about like body shaming and body imaging. Those have done very well, because people can relate. Yeah, they connect to them. They 100%. Connect to them, and they're like, oh, I'm not alone in this. Yeah. And so I really enjoy those conversations the most. And I guess that's what I know I said we'd touch on this later, and this is a perfect spot to talk on it, where the podcast initially, like I said, was meant to be a verbal diary for me to go and have a place to vent, because I had a very frustrating job. And everyone knows since then I've changed jobs. And I will open up about that once I've completely resigned from there, but I don't think it's professional to do that while I still work there. And I think a lot of people know the tea on that, but would love to hear the inside tea on the world in a corporation that doesn't respect its employees. Right. And I definitely will touch on that later. And that's what initially why I developed the podcast, was to come on here and talk about that. And then I realized I couldn't really do that, or I'd get fired. Yeah. But now I have a new job, and we can do that in a professional manner. And it kind of developed into businesses, because a lot of my female friends that I wanted on the podcast owned businesses. Right. So it kind of took that turn.
And then I was like, how can I mesh this? And then I met you. And it was kind of just like like you said, an organic thing that happened. I was like, okay, we can still do businesses, but incorporate how I jive, I guess, with it. Like with lip filler. I dissolve my lips. I want to get lip filler. Why not interview someone on lip filler? Because I'm interested in it and other people are too. It's a thing that we're all doing now. Like the breast implant illness where it was a personal thing, but I interviewed someone on it, kind of like that. So it's kind of going to be both. It's not going to be one thing. That's why I named it Babbles Nonsense, because I didn't want to put myself in a box where I couldn't talk about whatever I wanted to talk about.
I love it.
But then again, it's also hard when you're not in a box.
Right.
Because then you're like, oh, good.
Yeah. No, I think the most important thing is putting something out there that not only you connect to, but whoever is listening connects to as well. Because then at the end of the day, it's worth doing.
As long as it helps one person, a story, somebody else's story, I think that's what means the most to me. Because if anyone knows me, my aunt says that I'm a social justice warrior because I fight other people's battles and then I get kind of pulled into drama because I put my nose where it doesn't belong because I want to help them. So I will fight their battle even when it's not, I don't gain or lose anything.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what I kind of wanted this podcast to be, is to help someone where it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter to me if,
Well, I think you've actually helped yourself a lot through it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So, but thank you for doing this episode with
You're
me.
welcome.
And I hope we have another year and can do this again next year.
I know.
So cheers to that. And we will let y'all all go. Bye.
Bye.